All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thursday edition of Fantasy Football. Today, we are talking about busts. We got Kyle Pitts on a bust list. That's interesting because we had him on 2 breakouts lists yesterday. We do have a few emails to get to at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. I don't give out the email address enough, so if you want to send us a question, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. That is the letter I. You can also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a question. Good morning, Dave and Jamie. Who is your most controversial bust? If you look at the list you sent me, who's the one that's going to make people go crazy and say, what? Dave, who's your most controversial bust?
I don't know if it's going to make people go crazy to say that Pitts is the bust, but I'm not ready to buy back all the way in on Pitts just because of the quarterback change. I think the quarterback change is definitely going to help Drake London. I am not convinced that the Falcons are not going to add another wide receiver along the way. And I think Bijan Robinson's going to be used a lot in the pass game as well. So forgive me for not jumping back into the Kyle Pitts pool with 2 feet and floaties on. I don't think he's going to end up being this amazing stud fantasy tight end.
Okay. And Jamie, who's your most controversial
The 3 Browns. Nick Chubb,
3 Browns.
Amari Cooper, David Njoku. Everybody loves Nick Chubb. I get it.
I don't agree with one of them, but it's
you
not
don't
Chubb.
agree with one of them?
No.
Cooper. You love Cooper.
I do love Cooper. I think, I mean, I get the Njoku thing. It depends on what we think about Jerry Jeudy, I guess. But I think Jerry Judy's going to be solid, you know. But Cooper, when he wasn't playing with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he was so good, like almost elite last year. And I know he's 30. He's going to be 30 in May. 30 doesn't really concern me when you were good at 29. 31 is a little more concerning, but it doesn't bother me as much. And I still think he's the clear number 1 guy. He's been an underrated receiver. I think you're going to get good value on Amari Cooper. What do you think? You think he makes a round 5 pick right now, Amari Cooper? I'm
not necessarily looking at value right now because there's no consistent ADP to judge. I'm looking at what I think the expectation of these players is going to be, because to attach ADP to it right now, you're either going by a handful of drafts that we've done, which is less than 5, or you're looking at, industry ADP, which is, such a small sample size of drafts. It just doesn't make sense. So yes, round 5 is probably where he'll go. In most 3 receiver leagues, that's probably the range you're going to see him go because of how many receivers will get drafted. I mean, we're probably looking at 25 to 30 receivers by round 5 in that type of format. To me, that's too soon.
Right. So you don't see him as a top 50 pick.
No.
And he's been a top 50 pick in each of our 3 PPR mocks that we've done so far. I agree with you. I don't think he's a top 50 pick either, but I think he's pretty close to it.
Well, also, when you say don't go by ADP, go by what their expectations are, I mean, that's kind of the same thing to me. It's the only thing I can go on. But yeah, fine. If we expect him to be a round 5 pick, I'm fine with that. I mean, I saw him go in the last draft we did. He actually went the second to last pick of round 4, so 47th overall. And I don't know. What's the issue? What don't you like about Amari Cooper?
Oh, too many mouths to feed. I think you look at this Cleveland offense right now, assuming that we're going to see Njoku still be heavily involved. We're going to see Jerry Jeudy, who they just gave a 3-year contract extension to, involved. We're going to see Elijah Moore still involved. We're going to see, whatever we get out of the backfield there, whether it's Chubb and Ford or hopefully, a healthy Nick Chubb. But and then asking Deshaun Watson to support all these guys, I just don't think it works to the same level. I think Cooper's still the clear-cut number 1 guy there. I still think he's going to be a number 3 fantasy receiver. But I think more people probably feel the way you do than I do.
Mm-hmm. He averaged 17.7 PPR fantasy points per game in the non-Dorian Thompson-Robinson games. Dorian Thompson-Robinson averaged 140 yards per game with 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions in 3 games. So if you take those away, 17.7 points per game, that would have made him the number 6 wide receiver.
He was awesome.
Well, yeah. That includes the Flacco games?
Yes, that includes the Flacco games.
All right, so he was actually
at other guy, PJ Walker.
He was at 17.6 in the 5 games with Watson. 4 of the 5, he had at least 15 PPR points. I think if you look at Cooper and say, all right, he might be the last receiver on the fantasy board that can get 15 PPR points per game. I think if you view him that way, you're going to be fine. but I think there's enough wide receivers to go around to push him into that round 5 range. Especially, listen, and here's the thing about our stupid mock drafts: no rookies in them. So for sure at least one rookie receiver is going to go ahead of him. There's a chance all 3 of them could go ahead of him. That pushes him down even further. He's not a round 4 pick.
You think he's going to be worse than last year? Last year overall, like forget about the taking away the DTR games. Overall, 15.1 PPR per game, PPR points per game. That's right, wide receiver 19 per game.
Yep.
You think he'll be worse?
Yes.
No.
All right. So if you don't think he'll be what Jamie does, Dave says no. If you think he's going to score 15, wide receiver 19 should definitely be a 5th round pick, right?
Should be a 4th round pick.
Yeah. What should be a 4th round pick? But
yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the controversy, guys. Didn't mean to start it off with such divisive stuff. Make sure you're listening to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. Make sure you're listening to the Ion College Basketball Podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today. Why don't you just check out all of our podcasts at cbssports.com/podcast. Here's a couple other things you need to do. We want to grow on Spotify. So if you're not listening on Spotify, go ahead and follow us on Spotify. Listen there. Listen wherever you want, but follow us on Spotify. That'd be great. Just search for Fantasy Football Today. We want to be one of the best podcasts on that platform as well, which is a little bit newer to the podcast game. And also there are, you can watch on the CBS Sports Network. Our show's not on there yet, but it will be. You can watch our podcasts on the CBS Sports Network. So you'll see Ion College Basketball. You'll see some FBT right now, stuff like that. Anything that's relevant. The Beyond the Arc, the new basketball podcast on CBS Sports Network. Check out that on your whatever you use for whatever you watch TV on these days. I don't even know what the terminology is, but a lot of ways to get content from CBS Sports, and it's all great. So thank you for
a screen, Adam. You watch things on a screen.
You guys still have cable, or are you cord cutters?
Still have cable.
Same.
Yeah, me too. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm very happy with it. Hey, Stefon Diggs got traded. We reacted to that yesterday at about 45 minutes into the show when the news broke. But now we've had some time to think about it, digest it a little bit. Dave, I know you did a lot of Stefon Diggs digging. Digging. I didn't even know where I was going. I didn't even realize the pun I was walking into there. I know you did a lot of Diggsing yesterday. What are your updated thoughts on Stefon Diggs going to the Texans?
You're definitely Stefon your game today, Adam. So the first thing I wanted to figure out was why and how Houston decided to get Diggs. And on the surface, it's easy. He's a good wide receiver who can add to an already great receiving core. But I checked into a couple of stats with Stroud. Here's the first one. On the season, he had a 58.7% completion rate on 3rd downs. That was 21st among qualifying quarterbacks. Before the Dell injury, it was better. It was 62.3. That was still 15th. So that's the very first area. I think Diggs can come in and immediately be that money down type of receiver to help move the chains for Houston. I also think he's going to end up in the slot. I think he's there to take all of the work away from Noah Brown and Robert Woods. And those guys were primarily Houston slot receivers last year. I think Diggs can do that. I mentioned this yesterday. I still think he's going to move in and out. I think all 3 of the receivers will play all 3 spots, but my hunch is that Diggs is going to end up being the guy who plays the most in the slot. I also watched a lot of Stefon Diggs from last year to see, all right, did he lose a step? Does he suck? What's going on? He's quicker than fast. I don't think he's got the same type of deep speed that he once had, but he can still get open. He still has great footwork. He still has great hands, made a slew of really tough catches last year, just not in the game against Kansas City. He kind of botched that one, and that's the impression that he'll leave with the Buffalo coaching staff, along with what he did off the field. I still think he can play, and I still think that he has a shot to be the team leader in targets, catches, and even touchdowns. Where I think he's going to struggle is yardage, because they've got Tank Dell, they've got Nico Collins. Those guys can stretch the field. As part of my work, I watch both of those guys. And man, like Tank is fast. Everybody knows that. Nico is fast too. At worst, Nico is as fast as Stefon Diggs was last year. At best, he's definitely faster. So I would say that he's faster. He can move just as well. It's going to be a target crunch. It's going to stink. But I think we will see more yards per catch for Nico Collins than for Stefon Diggs. I think that makes Nico the slight favorite to be the best for fantasy in PPR. I think it's a no-brainer that he's the best in non-PPR. I think Diggs is third best in non-PPR and in half PPR. But in full PPR, I think that we will see Tank and Diggs very close to each other. I think all three qualify as top 24 wide receivers. And when you've got that, you obviously have to move up the quarterback. There was what was the stat that I found? All right, 7 games. There were 7 games last year where both Tank and Nico played at least 60% of the snaps. CJ Stroud averaged almost 28 fantasy points per game. Now we're adding Diggs. I think it's a no-brainer. I didn't say this yesterday. I wish I had. CJ Stroud is definitely a top 5 fantasy quarterback.
And so what were your PPR rankings again of these 3 receivers?
I've got Nico. I think Nico's at 17 among wide receivers. None of them are top 2-round picks for me. Nico's at 17. I've got him as a late 3rd rounder. I've got Diggs at 22. He's a late 4th rounder. And Tank Dell right behind him. He's at 24. So borderline number 2, number 3 wide receiver Tank Dell.
I thought you said Dell was going to be better than Diggs.
In non-PPR.
Oh, non-PPR, sorry.
Yeah. And half.
And that's still kind of low on Collins and Diggs, I think, based on just the way we reacted yesterday. Mm-hmm. Well, at least what Heath said, he thought Collins first part of early part of round 3 to mid part of round 3, Diggs mid to late round 3, where you said Collins late round 4, Diggs late round 3.
No, late round 3 on Collins, late round 4 on Diggs.
And Jamie, where are you?
I'm taking Cooper Kupp ahead of Diggs. I'm taking Higgins. While I'm a little lower on those guys than consensus, I'll take those guys ahead of Diggs easy. Drake London, Pittman ahead of all 3 of these Texans receivers for now. I'm
going to get Jamie's thoughts on this right after a quick commercial break. So don't go anywhere. We have some more news items. We have a lot more busts to talk about, players including DeAndre Swift, Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, Raheem Mostert, Aaron Jones. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
The best couch potatoes come from Pluto TV country.
And these taters, they like all sorts of different things.
Survivor Channel, Ink Master Channel.
If it's got a spaceship in it, I'm probably watching it.
3 channels dedicated to CSI.
Whatever mood you're in, it's going to be easy watching.
Welcome back. So just to recap, Dave gave extensive thoughts on the Diggs trade and what it means for the Texans. I don't think we'll talk about the Bills necessarily today, but he said Collins, Diggs, Dell in that order in PPR. Collins late round 3, Diggs late round 4, Dell just after Diggs. In non-PPR, he likes Dell better than Diggs. He likes Diggs 3rd in that group. Jamie, how about you? Now that you've had a day to think about it, your thoughts on Diggs to the Texans?
I think Collins is the best receiver. I have him ranked in a very similar range to Dave. Diggs would be the 2nd receiver, also in a similar range. Dell is outside the top 24. I was thinking about this yesterday. The only example that I could come up with where there was a season of 3 receivers in the top 24 on the same team was the Broncos with Peyton Manning when he threw 55 touchdowns.
Yeah, Dave and I did this morning, actually. So there was one season where you had 3 top 25 guys recently, and that was the Carolina Panthers in 2020 with Robbie Chosen Anderson, Curtis Samuel, and DJ Moore. But I'm not really going to count it because Curtis Samuel had 200 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He would not have been top 24 or 5 without that. So you're right. There was that. It was also, Dave pointed this one out, the 2004 Colts with Stokely, Wayne, and Harrison, not in the reverse order. And of course, Peyton Manning. In both of those seasons, just like the Broncos season you mentioned, he threw, it was like 5,400 yards and 52 touchdowns or something like that. 55 is insane. So yeah, it's very hard to have 3 top.
Yeah, there's not going to be the 3 Texans finishing as top 24 receivers. So it's going to be who's the odd man out. And I'm going to guess it's probably Dell, just because I think he'll be 3rd in targets. So he's the one I'd be the most concerned about. But I feel like Diggs may get overdrafted because of his name and going to a situation where people think he might be happier.
You want to know what's crazy, Jamie, about that 2013 Broncos season? You had Demaryius Thomas was the number 1 receiver in fantasy, Eric Decker number 9, Wes Welker number 21, and Julius Thomas was the number 2 tight end with 12 touchdowns in 14 games. We're never going to see something like that. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, good stuff. Thank you for updating us on your thoughts there, guys. Let's go to more news and notes. Doug Peterson talked up Gabe Davis, called him a Swiss Army knife. I don't really know if he said anything about anything encouraging, just that like he loves him and he's, obviously he's a great blocker.
So I was there for him saying this, the Swiss Army knife comment, unless he said it again recently, but it was at the owners' meetings. He kept referencing his 80 plus targets per season as someone who can handle a heavier workload. It just feels like what they're going to do is have two guys who could stretch the field in Gabe Davis and Zay Jones, and two guys who can play in the middle of the field in Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. And hopefully that opens things up for those guys. I'm very, very, very much more interested in Christian Kirk bouncing back to what he did 2 years ago, and Evan Ingram continuing to do what he did last year, but even playing like he did 2 years ago as well. Both those guys should be fantastic. I would take Christian Kirk over Tank Dell. I would take Christian Kirk over Stefon Diggs.
Okay. And Rashee Rice said he takes full responsibility for his part in that multi-car accident. We'll obviously be monitoring that. This is not really fantasy relevant, but the Lions matched San Francisco's offer sheet for backup tight end Brock Wright. So they'll be keeping him. And the Buccaneers signed edge rusher Randy Gregory. Let's go to the busts. Dave's list has DeAndre Swift, Austin Ekeler, Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison, and Kyle Pitts. We discussed Kyle Pitts. So Swift and Ekeler. Jamie, do you agree with both of those calls? Swift and Eckler's busts?
I agree with Ekeler. I think another guy that'll get overdrafted because people will still fall in love with the name. Swift, I'm a little torn on, just because I think this offense in Chicago is going to be much improved with, hopefully more consistent quarterback play, and that factors in Justin Fields missing time. But I do think that there's got to be some subtraction happening here, because if all three guys stay, I would imagine they're all going to get touches, because why would you just kick Khalil Herbert to the bench or not use Roshan Johnson? It doesn't make sense. So I think there will be some fallout here, but I think where you're drafting Swift, look, if he can stay healthy, he proved he could be a very good fantasy running back last year. And we know he's been great at times during his time in Detroit. If he's not overdrafted, then I'm fine with him. If Dave is anticipating him getting drafted in the first maybe 4 rounds, then yes, I'd be completely out. But round 6 or later, which I think is where he'll end up going, I'm perfectly fine with him.
If he ends up going there, then I can't call him a bust. That's good value for a running back who should be okay in Chicago. We just don't know what this offense will truly look like. They've changed offensive coordinators. They're going to have a rookie quarterback. There's a rookie quarterback that likes to make plays on his own if it's Caleb Williams, and throw downfield, not necessarily check down to the running back a lot. And it's a head coach rather that does believe in using multiple running backs. I would be surprised if the OC didn't walk in lockstep with that as well. We can talk about how Swift averaged under 10 PPR points per game in his last 8 games with Philly last year. A lot of that has to do with just touchdowns. And so I don't know how many he's going to score in Chicago, but I don't think it'll be a lot. We know that there's an injury history there as well. I don't like taking him with a top 60 pick. So I'm kind of putting him on the bust list, and I might move him outside of the top 70 picks, depending on how the draft ends up shaking out.
Yeah, a couple of questions about DeAndre Swift, about the Bears backfield. Who's the third down back, and who's the short yardage and or goal line back? Swift's been a really good running back in his 4 seasons on any metric, but mostly. But he has not been good converting on third down and fourth down and 1. He's not been good in that. Now, I don't know. There's a stat on True Media. It's short yardage conversion. It's 3rd and 4th and 1. I don't know. Maybe he's good on 3rd and 4th and 2 for all I know. But 3rd and 4th and 1, he has not been good. Roshan was used as the third down back last year, but we know that's kind of a strength of DeAndre Swift's. And then a couple months ago, I think I was speculating. I was like, I wonder how many of Caleb Williams' rushing touchdowns were near the goal line. Then I was like, I'm not even going to bother looking it up. Well, I did look it up, and it was a lot. It was like half, if not more, were from 1 to 3 yards. He had a lot of 1-yard touchdown runs. So you never want to see that from a quarterback when you're talking about the running back. Dave, what do you think the answers to those questions are, though? Short yardage and third down.
Short yardage in general will probably belong to either Williams or Roshan. Third down, if it's 3rd and long, makes sense to have Swift out there, doesn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. But third and short, I think you'll see Roschon. And I bet you see Roschon start every third drive, and then Swift mixes in with him. I don't think he's going to be the every down back by any measure in Chicago, unless like injuries go crazy there.
Ekeler, wow, Dan Schneider should be on this show because he took DeAndre Swift in round 5 and Austin Ekeler in round 7 in our latest draft. Ekeler went ahead of Tajay Spears, Zach Moss, Ramondre Stevenson, Zamir White. PPR.
Huh. Yeah.
Man?
I need to see it from Ekeler. Adam, you and I have reviewed his film. He didn't look as fast as he used to at the beginning of the year. And then when he came back from his ankle injury, he looked like molasses. Hated seeing it. I like this guy. I think he's a great story. I think he's a great player. Fantasy managers have come to know and love him. Former top 3 overall pick in fantasy. But now he's heading to Washington. I know that there's this cozy reunion with Anthony Lynn. It's an offense that might be okay for him in terms of targets and catches, but he's still going to split. And I bet they don't lean on him in short yardage goal line duty. And we just don't know how explosive he'll be. So until we see him, or at least until I see him in training camp, and if people say that, oh yeah, he looks great, he's going to be the starter, all right, maybe I'll change my tune, but not a lot. It won't be by a lot, because this is the absolute definition of the typical old running back changing teams, hanging on to what's left in their career, and disappointing for fantasy.
All right, Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, and Jordan Addison are the 3 wide receivers on the bust list you provided. I hate seeing 2 second-year guys on these lists.
Yeah, me too. I don't love it, but I think the direction of their respective offenses put them on this list.
All right, well, what about the Ravens offense is different? I mean, I get it with the.
What could it be?
Well, I mean, Gus Edwards had like 13 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
I understand that they got Derrick Henry, but they were already the lowest pass volume team in football, or at least the lowest pass rate, second fewest pass attempts in football. Does that really change with Derrick Henry?
There were 7 games in 2023 where he had 13 or more PPR points. A running back had 12.9 or fewer in 5 of those 7. And 14 PPR or fewer in 6 of those 7. So the theory that I worked with pretty much all season with Zay Flowers managed to manifest, and it stinks because he's good. He's really, really a good, talented receiver. But I don't think this offense is about to shift into being pass heavy. I don't think his targets are about to go into the 7 or 8 target per game range. I think he's going to be close to a 0 when they get inside the 10, much less at the goal line. And I think he's going to have a lot of disappointing weeks. And so we love to gravitate toward these second-year receivers and third-year receivers. I have a feeling that Zay Flowers is going to be one of those guys. He'll have 5 great games all year. You're not going to know when they're coming. And he's going to be kind of a disappointment for the other 12. That makes me sad. I've got him on my dynasty team. But I think that he's just wrong team, wrong time.
How do you feel about this, about those 2 specifically, Jamie? And I have a feeling that we can all agree, I think, that they went too early in our latest draft. They went 49th and 50th back-to-back, Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. Jamie, your thoughts?
I think Flowers is a very good number 3 fantasy receiver as long as he's drafted appropriately. If you're drafting him to be a starter, then everything Dave said is completely accurate. If you're drafting him to be a third receiver where you'll get those 5 games, if you're just starting him with the hope that talented player, they're still going to throw the ball enough. And it's not like they have all these elite targets on the field to take away from Zay Flowers. I think you started to see at the end of the season. Now, granted, that was without Mark Andrews, so take that into account. But it's not like Isaiah likely was doing nothing. This is the rapport that Lamar Jackson is establishing. They worked a lot together last offseason in South Florida. I think that will continue again this offseason. And so this is, I think, the type of young player you want to invest in at the right cost. At that price, which you said, no chance would I be taking him there. But again, you have to factor in 3 receiver league. Receivers get pushed up. If you want to get players that you think have the chance to play at a high level for hopefully more than 5 games, that's the type of guy you want to take a chance on because he still will be the number 1 receiver, maybe number 2 target getter, but number 1 receiver in the offense.
And
I do also like the fact that you're hearing things out of Baltimore. You referenced this the other day, Adam, about changes that John Harbaugh wants to see. The one thing that came out with Derrick Henry was that he's going to be a big part of their RPO game. And so there's going to be so many opportunities to open up the passing game because of defenders in the box and trying to stop Derrick Henry and trying to stop Lamar Jackson, that Zay Flowers is going to see one-on-one coverage almost all day long. And so he's going to win a lot of those matchups. So I have no problem with Flowers as early as round 6. So he wouldn't be a bust for me. Addison, I think, will get drafted appropriately because I think a lot of people realize, it's a bad quarterback situation right now in Minnesota. Nobody's looking at the second receiver, potentially third option in the passing game with Sam Darnold and saying, I got to have Jordan Addison. And so it just sucks because he does have a lot of talent. But it was going to be tough for him if Kirk Cousins was back. I mean, we saw it last year, when Jefferson was healthy and Hockenson was healthy. So depending on when Hockenson comes back, that'll kind of sway, I think, how Addison performs, especially if they do figure out their quarterback situation. So at the right price, I'm definitely buying. But if you're talking about, round 5, round 6, I'm probably out. Round 7 is where I'd be looking at Addison. Hopefully more as a number 4 receiver, chance to be a flex. Still like the talent, still like the potential. But with Sam Darnold at quarterback, it's hard to expect a huge second year from him as long as Jefferson's continuing to get fed targets.
And I'd still be nervous about him if it's Drake May. Like this is not going to be a situation that can work out great. He had Cousins last year, first 5 games. Cousins was on the field. Jefferson was on the field. He averaged 12.4 PPR points per game. Addison averaged 5.8 targets per game. Now, how are those numbers supposed to go up if Jefferson's healthy and the quarterback is worse? I don't see it.
He caught a lot of touchdowns, and the Vikings were throwing 41 times a game in those 5 games. I know they're going to throw a lot. I don't know about that with a rookie quarterback.
Well, Kevin O'Connell, I asked him, just about Jefferson, and, I was listening to a lot of his answers just when I was sitting at the table with him, that he was saying, they want to bring in the right quarterback to fit their philosophy, not that they're going to change their philosophy because of the quarterback. So, I mean, we saw it with Nick Mullins. They'll
throw a lot. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. They will throw a lot. I don't know if it'll be 41 times, but they'll definitely throw a lot. I get that. All right, but
I just want to say real quick, the plus for Addison would be is if they do have the right quarterback and Hockenson misses half the year, which could certainly be a possibility.
Right. Hockenson's on Jamie's bust list, by the way. But for Flowers and Addison, are you taking, obviously Collins, but are you taking all of the Texans receivers over them?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you taking George Pickens over them?
Yep.
DK Metcalf?
Yep.
Amari Cooper?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey. All right. Last bust is
Christian
Calvin
Kirk
Ridley.
too.
How about Calvin Ridley? He's on your bust list, Dave. Are you taking Calvin Ridley or are you taking Addison / Flowers?
I'm taking, I currently have Flowers 1 spot ahead of Ridley. We'll see if I can stick to that. I think in full PPR, that might be tough to stick with. It's a bet against Will Levis being able to support 2 wide receivers every single week. And Ridley coming off of a year where he was just so up and down, playing with a good quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And I'm using the term good strictly here. I don't think he's any better than good. I don't think he's bad, but I think Will Levis is still a huge unknown. I think that whole offense is kind of an unknown. And I don't see the upside in Ridley, who's gone. Goodness, he went 45th in our half PPR mock. He went 38th in our full PPR mock. And before he signed with Tennessee, he was still going in round 5. And I struggle with that. I don't think he's a round 5 pick as long as Levis is there and as long as there's still question marks about how effective he can be in an offense that has so many other mouths to feed.
So we'll drop down another tier at wide receiver. Would you take Calvin Ridley or Terry McLaurin and Deontay Johnson?
McLaurin, yes. In full PPR, I'm not there yet with Deontay.
And Jamie, you said Ridley would be the top of that group?
Yeah, easy. I'm not as excited about him as Heath is, but I do think that to talk about the Tennessee offense, I mean, obviously there's some unknowns, but this is going to be a much better offense with Brian Callahan calling plays. I mean, just dramatically better for the passing game.
We're going to take a break. We're going to get to Jamie's busts. We got Justin Herbert. I can't wait to talk about the Dolphins backfield. So you got Raheem Mostert on here, and I'm going to ask, hey, should you have Devon Achane on here? We'll talk about that. Austin Ekeler is a shared one. I didn't see. We got a mutual one. Very good. And we got some older wide receivers, of course, and some tight ends. We'll be right back on FFT.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa. And all day long.
24/7.
Okay, you got Justin Herbert as a quarterback on your bust list. And I know we've done this before, but we'll do it again. All right, so 2 questions. He's QB blank right now, and he's QB blank if they draft one of the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL draft.
He's QB 15 right now, and he'll be QB 13 if they draft one of the top wide receivers.
That's it. That's interesting.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh, buddy.
I'm kind of banking on them already doing something to improve their receiving core. And I'm higher than Jamie on Herbert, but he's only 11th for me. If they come out of the draft without another wide receiver, Tubes is where he will go down.
Okay. Yes, Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman. You don't love it for pass volume, but we do say this. Who's the best quarterback they've had? They've had
Kaepernick.
Well, Kaepernick, yeah. I mean, obviously Roman had Lamar Jackson, but they've never had a pocket passer like Justin Herbert. So we'll see. And I wonder if they've ever had a bad defense. Maybe they won't have a bad defense next year with the Chargers, but it was terrible last year. All right, Nick Chubb. We didn't really get too far into it with him, but you have Nick. Let's go to a couple of guys, or how about 3 guys? We'll do Mostert separately, but let's look at Chubb, Aaron Jones, and Ekeler. What's the earliest you take any of them, and who's your favorite? Who's your favorite? I get they're all on your bust list, but Chubb, Aaron Jones, Ekeler. How do you feel about them?
Chubb is my favorite, just with the idea of that he can get healthy and hopefully become the running back that he has always been. But you're asking him at 28 years old to come off of a very significant knee injury where he had multiple surgeries. The ACL was in November after having the MCL in September, MCL and meniscus in September. And so I'm sure, they're going to, do everything they can to get him back on time. But they also have the luxury of, 2 running backs, one that was very consistent for them last year in Jerome Ford, just didn't score a lot of touchdowns. But they got 13 rushing touchdowns out of their backfield, 4 from Ford and 9 from Kareem Hunt. And Deontay Foreman's proven that he can be a capable backup everywhere he's been in his last 3 stops, whether it was Carolina, Tennessee, or Chicago. And so they have the luxury of, I think, taking their time with Nick Chubb to make sure, especially if they consider themselves a playoff team, which I hope they do, that they can get him back by the middle to the end of the season. What does that mean for fantasy? That means that they're not going to necessarily put all the work back on his plate. And so I think people, again, fall in love with the name. You'll get some positive training camp reports, I hope. Kevin Stefanski just said at the owners' meetings that they're going to listen to the medical staff and not force him to try and return while he's trying, I guess, according to at least the question. I didn't really see this, but I'm assuming some of the Cleveland beat writers know that he's probably working his ass off to try and get back on the field for the start of camp, knowing the type of guy that he is. So that's going to, I think, lend itself to him maybe getting drafted too soon. I took him in the last PPR draft that we did, which I believe was round 6 or round 7, which
63 overall.
Which I'm fine with that, especially given the construct of my roster at the time. So roster management will matter. Draft round capital will matter. But for the most part, if he's getting drafted in the first 5 rounds, which is what I think is going to end up happening, then I'm definitely out.
All right, that's Nick Chubb. All 3 of these guys went in round 6 or 7 of our latest PPR draft. Chubb was the first one off the board. I took him. That would be the 3rd pick of round 6, so that would be 63 overall. And then Jones went 4 picks later, and then Ekeler went almost a full round after that. What do you have against Aaron Jones?
I mean, we saw it last year, 5 great games at the end of the season, but for the most part, struggled with injuries. And 29 years old, switching teams, the Vikings could not run the ball at all last year. And so now you're asking him to be successful on a team with a backup quarterback situation. He'll have moments. I think he'll have 5 or 6 good games like we saw last year. Unfortunately for fantasy managers, 3 of those were in the playoffs. 2 of those were in the playoffs. But the 5 straight 100-yard games, I think still people remember his name and see what he did. And the 3 touchdown game against Dallas helped them win that playoff game. Those things carry a lot of weight for people as they look year over year. And so you're seeing him as a starter in Minnesota and the hope that he's still going to get a heavy workload, which I think is going to be the case as long as he's healthy. But I just don't love the situation for him because of how the Vikings offense operated last year, how I think it will operate this year. And I do think that we'll see Ty Chandler or maybe another running back added continue to take some work away from Aaron Jones. So again, right price, it's well worth the the gamble that he can still, give you those few pockets of success, but I just don't think it's going to be consistent, and somebody that I'm probably out on for the most part in 2024.
So let me give you where he went in our 3 PPR mocks. And this is just really me spouting off numbers. You tell me which one is the best. 89th overall. Would you take him at 89th overall?
Yes.
Would you take him at 74th overall?
Probably not.
Okay, that's early round 7. Then you wouldn't take him at 67th overall.
No.
I love him as a 0 RB target once you get to round 7.
This is Aaron Jones, by the way, we're talking about. I think my issue with I mean, I don't want to say it like that. It's like I don't really know who to draft. All these guys have flaws. So tell me the running backs that are going after these guys, Ekeler, Chubb, Aaron Jones, or in the same range that we should be drafting instead.
I'll start with one that went after him in our last PPR, and that's Najee Harris. I think Najee's got the better shot to have more carries over the course of the season, score more touchdowns, probably have more yards if he's going to do both of those two things.
I mean, for me, it's, I'm hoping Tajay falls a little more than this, than he's been drafted. And that, our drafts, we get a little too excited about him, especially the last one where he went ahead of Tony Pollard, which I think is a mistake. But Chase Brown is somebody I would draft, again, at cost ahead of these guys. Not ahead of these guys, but at better value than these guys. Like, I'd rather have Ty Chandler at his price than I would Aaron Jones, just because of the situation, knowing that, again, to use the Ben Gretsch phrase, the ambiguous backfield. I feel like this is an ambiguous backfield. I think we're going to get some, situations where the second guy there, again, if it's still Chandler, is going to get more touches. Like Dave made the reference to Matt Eberflus being a multiple back type of guy. Every coach in the NFL right now is a multiple back kind of guy. I don't think there's very many. This is a workhorse backfield. Even Raheem Morris, as much as he's bragging about Bijan Robinson, there's so few of these guys, which is why we're drafting McCaffrey where we do, and Hall where we do, and Robinson where we do. I mean, a lot of people's fourth running back is Jahmyr Gibbs. We know he's not a featured guy, so that's just the nature of the NFL right now. But in any event, I think we're looking at a situation where Chandler and Chase Brown, well, I'll say Chase Brown, Brian Robinson, he may end up being better than Austin Ekeler, especially in terms of, carries and rush yards. I don't think he's going to be better than him in the passing game. So I would take Ekeler if just talking about player in PPR, but wouldn't surprise me if Robinson's better. So yeah, there's a number of guys. This is why you take the hero RB approach. You take one of these guys that you like early in the first round or 2, or maybe 3, depending on how it falls. Load up heavy at receiver, take your quarterback, take your tight end, and then start to just take some of these guys.
Let me throw 3 more names at you. Zach Moss or Aaron Jones?
Moss as of now, but I don't like it.
Ramondre or Aaron Jones?
Ramondre easily.
Raheem Mostert or Aaron Jones?
I think I might have them back to back. I'd go Jones, but they're close.
Yeah, I'm back to back. Mostert ahead of Jones. Actually, I have all 4 of those guys back to back to back to back. None of them in my top 24 at running back. Adam
Jones at 29 versus Mostert at 32 is just like, which ARP player do you like better?
Which 0 RB are you going to be able to get your hands on first?
They're not just but the thing, it's interesting comparison, Jones and Mostert. They're both old for a running back. Jones is going to be, 29 this year? Or 30? Yep. 29. Mostert's 32.
He will be 32, I think, next week.
Yeah. I think April 9th or something. And happy birthday, Raheem Mostert. But they both are still performing at a super high level, and neither of them have a lot of carries, right? Neither of them, especially Mostert. Mostert has almost about 600 career carries. Last year was a career high with just over 200. He has had 390 carries in the last 2 seasons with Miami. He is on.
I mean, I understand what you're saying about Jones playing at a high level because of how he finished the season, but he killed so many people last year.
Yeah, but it depends how you look at injuries, right? I mean, did he get injured because he was old? I don't know. He used to get injured a lot when he was younger, and then he had a couple years where he didn't really get injured. Did the fact that he got injured last year mean he's going to get injured again this year? I don't look at injuries that way. There are some players I'm like, okay, they're seriously injury prone. But I'll go back to 2 years ago where Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Miles Sanders, there was like 1 or 2 other guys that every year they got hurt, and all 3 of them played full seasons or very close to full seasons. So I just like
if they were young.
If Jones, it doesn't matter. Like, that's the thing. Like, young guys get hurt, old guys get hurt. I don't see evidence that older players get hurt more than
But it's
younger
also they
players.
get slower. It's not just that they're hurt; they just get slower.
But he's not. But Aaron Jones has not been slowing down. 28 is at the old age for running backs, and he was great, per carry anyway. Now he did struggle earlier in the year, so maybe he was slowing down. Raheem Mostert, I don't see signs necessarily of him slowing down. I mean, maybe a little bit. He wasn't terrific down the stretch. But yeah, I don't know. This whole idea that older players get hurt, I don't really.
It's not about them getting hurt. It's about them struggling to be as productive.
I get that. That's probably going to happen. But why is Mostert on your bust list?
Well, I think the guy behind him, if you want to say that Davante Achane is behind him, is better at this point and, more explosive. And I think the Dolphins will start to lean that way. Again, 32-year-old running back, the track record of these guys just do not hold up, once they get past 30. And so he was awesome last year, but this is just, taking low-hanging fruit. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Guy scored 18 rushing touchdowns, 21 total touchdowns to tie Christian McCaffrey. There's no way he's replicating that, so if you're chasing production, please do not chase Raheem Mostert production. And so, yes, you could certainly make the case, you said this, that Davante Achane can be a bust because he's going to get maybe overdrafted with the chance of 7.8 yards per carry and, seeing almost every game where he was 13.1 PPR points or more, with a handful of games of 20 PPR points or more and one game over 50 PPR points. But just the explosiveness on this offense, which we know they value speed, and it's why they value Mostert. I just think, again, for a Dolphins team that's trying to get better, playing Davante Achane over Raheem Mostert, I think is the right way to go.
This is, you got one guy who's going into his second year. You got one guy who's going to be 32 next week. Happy birthday, Raheem Mostert again. I do have the happy birthday music I could cue up, but
No.
who's more likely to get hurt, between Mostert and Achane?
Sure. It's a fair argument given that Achane missed a lot of time last year. And I get that, that goes back to your age isn't a factor in injury argument. But again, I just think 32-year-old running back, they just don't last in this league. And when, not that he's slow, he certainly was not the case by any stretch last year. And he was clearly very, very productive and awesome for this Dolphins offense and awesome for fantasy managers. But at some point, there's going to be a changing of the guard, whether it's early in the season, middle of the season, or the end of the season. And Davante Achane, as we saw when he was clicking that 3-game stretch from the Denver game to the next 2 after that, Mostert was in more of a secondary role. He wasn't as productive. He was, clearly losing work. And I think that's the way that Mike McDaniel will go.
Jamie, I gotta say, I'm not really all that interested in drafting Mostert because they don't throw to him and he needs to score those touchdowns, and Achane's awesome. But if we could just talk about Achane potentially as a bust here, because what really concerns me is Achane had that 3-game stretch. Then he misses 4 games. He comes back. He plays maybe 1 snap, gets re-injured, misses 1 more game. And then when he came back, Raheem Mostert was the clear lead running back for the next 4 games. You might not see it on the box score when you look at that Washington game, but the Dolphins were winning 31-7 at halftime, and Achane, I think, had 2 carries in the first half, something like that.
Sure, no. I mean, I looked like a fool because I said I wouldn't play him that game because of the turf in Washington going in that.
Right. He didn't play until it was 31-7, and then he had a huge second half. But then after that, Mostert had a lot more carries the next week. He had 9 carries against Dallas, Mostert. Achane had 0, and then Mostert got hurt. And then Achane, finished that game, and then the next 2 games, then they both sucked in the playoffs. But that's what I look at with Achane. I'm going, man, he comes back, he gets re-injured, and then he was second fiddle to Mostert. And that scares me, with Achane going in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I think the thing, and look, our last draft, he went in the 3rd round because I drafted him in the 3rd round. So I think that's actually where I'll end up settling in terms of ADP. But I'm always looking at upside. And this guy's upside is as good as any running back in the league. When you talk about speed and explosiveness and, yards per carry, what he was able to accomplish. I mean, this is your type of guy, Adam, in terms of,
I love him. He's amazing.
Long plays and YPC for life. It's just really a bet against the older player sustaining and holding up and being as productive. Yes, the durability issues are 100% there for Achane, but I think this is, the type of guy that you get for the majority of the season. He's a league winner. And to me, he's a breakout, not a bust.
And look, let's be real. Your bust list is a lot of aging players. It's just a theme for you this year. Because you look at the receivers, Adams, Diggs, and Keenan Allen. Yeah, every year. This is a fascinating year because we've got these wide receivers, especially Diggs, Adams, Allen, Cooper, 30 years old. They've been stalwarts for a while. It's kind of like what we saw at the running back position. We kind of saw it there, right? I mean, like Zeke, I guess you could say Aaron Jones.
Zeke fell off. Dalvin Cook fell off. Ekeler injured.
Yeah,
was a huge bust.
You're almost forecasting that, I feel like, with receiver when you look at your list.
I mean,
Cooper.
There's a reason we say Father Time is undefeated. It just happens. It sucks. I mean, we love these players for so long. They've been so productive for us. And look, there's going to be exceptions. Keenan Allen was great when he was healthy last year at 31 years old. Mike Evans was a monster last year for the majority of the season. Davante Adams struggled, and you could say quarterback play and coaching change and all those things. He still was good. Stefon Diggs, I know, 16.1 PPR points per game. The end of the year sucked, but still the overall picture, got you the production that you were somewhat hoping for, just not as it spread out over the course of the season. And look, Derrick Henry, as we talked about, when he was, getting the work when the team was winning, he's not on my bust list. I think he's going to be good in Baltimore. Just I'm afraid of people overdrafting him. But yeah, when you look at these older players, that's what happens in this league. They tend to get old very, very quickly. DeAndre Hopkins got old quickly. It sucks, but it just happens.
Happens in all sports too.
So between Diggs, Adams, Cooper, and
golf, they're still okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at some point you fall off.
Like once you get in your 60s,
Yeah.
Right.
Adams, Diggs, Allen, Cooper. These older receivers. Who are you most concerned about just falling off a cliff and being terrible?
Oh, Keenan Allen. At his age, going from what has been such an ideal situation with a young quarterback on the rise, and even the early part of his career was still a very competent Phillip Rivers. In San Diego, Los Angeles, indoor stadium the last couple of years, to outdoors, Chicago, rookie quarterback, guy on a team who may be just at this point in his career better in DJ Moore. Look, Keenan Allen gets open. He could probably get open in his 40s, maybe his 50s. To what degree is he going to be as productive? And that's the thing that worries me. So 32, new quarterback, new situation. I'm just probably completely out. And I know you've said this a lot, and I agree. His game, it's like a shooter in basketball. His game should age, because of how he plays and where he lines up, and again how he's shown an ability to always be open. But I just don't trust that Caleb Williams will continue to feature him. The Bears will continue to feature him the same way. 150 plus targets, 100 catches. He's never been a high touchdown guy from a double digit standpoint, but will he even get 6 or 7? So I'm just really worried about him the most.
Okay. Dave, how about you? Same question. Adams, Diggs, Allen, Cooper. Who are you most concerned about?
It's Allen. Allen, for sure. Even
Diggs,
though... What?
It's Diggs for me.
You're most
the thing about Diggs,
he was so bad in the second half last year, and now he could be the number 3. He could be the number 3.
Well, that I was going to bring that up. You remember his time in Minnesota when he was sharing basically the number 1 role with Adam Thielen. We had him on set in Miami when we had our Super Bowl show there. And we said to him, we asked him, I forget who it was, do you know who the number 1 guy is going to be? His answer was funny, like, we just kind of never know who's going to get, the most targets that day, however he answered it. But yeah, there's just a lot of mouths to feed, and we didn't really touch on Dalton Schultz very much. He's still going to be a big part of this. Joe Mixon's going to be a big part of this. They have very talented wide receivers here for a guy that's going to be, in his early 30s. And as you said, struggled. So yeah, there's reason for concern there for sure.
But are you taking him ahead of Keenan Allen, or are you taking Keenan Allen?
I'm thinking Diggs ahead of Keenan Allen. I trust the quarterback situation in Houston and the situation better than I do the one in Chicago right now.
I think Houston might end. I think Houston will throw more than they did last year. I don't think it's necessarily going to be by a ton. I'm not sure if Chicago will throw that much. Yeah, they'll throw more, but I don't know if it's that much more. I agree with you. I think trusting the situation in Houston is slam dunk compared to Chicago.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a different question of who are you most concerned about and who are you drafting first. Because also like Adams concerns me. I think he's still terrific, but gosh, they could have just a terrible quarterback situation there. They're all concerning. That's why they're all on the bust list.
Right. Like, I don't know how it's more concerning than it was last year when they had Aiden O'Connell as a rookie after they changed coordinators.
No,
and he
was
still averaged just over 16 PPR points per game after McDaniels got fired. So,
yeah,
and he can still play. And Minshew just had a great year with Michael Pittman. So I'm okay with Adams, but he's got to be like late round 2. He's not.
And Pittman scored 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Adams is better at that than Pittman is. I think he's going to get more red zone targets. He already has been, and he's not on an offense that's going to hand off as much. They'll hand off.
Oh, I'd be surprised about that.
We'll see what they do in the draft, but I don't think Zamir White and Alexander Madison are going to drop the hammer and turn Davante Adams into a 5-touchdown guy.
No. But I don't think you're getting double-digit touchdowns from him, which is what you're hoping for a round 2 pick. And it's not like the Colts were like just all Jonathan Taylor. I mean, they trusted Zach Moss, and clearly what we saw from the Raiders with Zamir White, he averaged 21 carries per game in the 4 games that he started without Josh Jacobs. That's a lot. And as you recall the conversation yesterday, I changed my tune after Heath's answer. Would not be surprising if Zamir White is top 5 in carries next year if he stays healthy.
I was going to say one more thing about these guys. All right.
I don't think that's the reason to dislike Adams. I think the reason to dislike Adams is the quarterback situation, but it's also readjusting expectations for Adams. Like, do you view Adams as someone who can't even get to 15 PPR points per game, Jamie?
No, I think he's in that range, but he went from 19 to 16, and the downward trend when these guys get older.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting back to 19.
Yeah, right. 2 years ago with Derek Carr, Davante Adams became a deep threat. I mean, he was scoring all these long.
He had 180 targets.
Yeah, but Derek Carr and him had a very good connection downfield. Last year, he had no connection with anyone. He was just, he's still getting some targets. And then this year, if Minshew's the quarterback, the word on Minshew is he cannot push the ball downfield.
No.
Which benefited Michael Pittman big time. We've seen Adams have different stretches of his career where he's been different receivers. He's been great as a short yardage guy. He's been great as a deep guy. But I mean, Minshew, I shouldn't have said that their quarterback situation could be so bad, whatever I said, because I do like Minshew enough. I think he's good for a number 1 receiver, but he's not going to challenge downfield. He's not going to give you those big splash plays for Adams. All right. Jamie, sorry, 30 seconds on Hockenson.
Injury. That's all. It sucks because he was so good last year. And even with questionable quarterback play, if he was 100% healthy, he's still got top 5 upside. But coming back from the knee injury, suffered late in the year, I'm just most likely out on Hockenson.
Fantasy football at cbsi.com. Here are some emails. This is from Nathan. Where's Nathan from?
Nathan is from
Cleveland.
Yo. Sure. Let's put him in Cleveland, Ohio.
How carried away should you get with prioritizing quarterbacks in a superflex league? I recently did a dynasty startup in which I took 4 quarterbacks with my first 4 picks. They were Allen, Herbert, Love, and Lawrence. Did I do the right thing?
Oh, boy.
I like to know what the rest of the team looks like.
If your league's going to trade a lot, then you probably did. It was.
And it's a small league. Like, is it an 8-team superflex league?
Oh,
I think he did the right thing, even if that's the case.
No, that'd be worse.
Well, list the quarterbacks again: Allen, Herbert, Love, and
Trevor.
Lawrence.
I mean, to get those 4, to get the last 2 quarterbacks in rounds 3 and 4 of a startup superflex dynasty league is probably very shallow.
Probably, yeah. Okay, I think that matters. If you did this in a 12-team league, I think you did great. If you did it in a 10-team league, it's okay. 8-team league, you made a mistake. That's how I feel. But I don't know how you guys feel.
But I don't know if he made a mistake, though, because you could have a lot of trade chips there with still having a decent roster.
Would you ever do anything like this in a startup dynasty?
No. But I mean, again, you got to know who you're drafting with. It's probably silly, but in 8-team league, you get away with it a little bit more.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, when we were doing our startup, we did a startup superflex last week, and it was broadcast live on FFT Dynasty. And I don't remember which guest it was. One of the guests already had 2 quarterbacks, and he was up in the 3rd round. And either Trevor Lawrence went 1 pick before him, or he took him. I don't remember, but he was going like, man, I can't believe Trevor Lawrence is still on the board. That was in the 3rd round. He's like, I might have to take him, even though he already had 2 quarterbacks. So I see the best player available strategy there and the conundrum. But all right, we'll see how that works out for you, Nathan in Cleveland. This is from Dave in Flint. I keep hearing Kyler Murray as a sleeper pick. I'm being offered Kyler Murray in my dynasty league. It is a non-super flex and it's 10 teams. I would get Kyler Murray and a 2024 3rd-round pick for one of my 2026 first-round picks. I have Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields, and Gardner Minshew. So he would give up a first-round pick in 2026 for Kyler and a 2024 3rd-round pick.
I mean, it's so far out. That's crazy. To forget about who the prospects will be in 2026. It's just like, if your team is great, is Kyler Murray for, let's say, 2 years of what he's capable of doing better than the 12th pick in the first round of a rookie draft? Knowing that, look, right now you have Anthony Richardson. If Richardson goes down, you're screwed. Minshew may not even be the starter for the Raiders, and Fields is definitely not the starter for the Steelers.
Just quit the league in 2025.
Oh, man.
10-team league, I may explore some other trades first.
Right.
Just to see. Like, can you get a comparable quarterback to at least give you a better backup to Richardson? Or maybe just see if you can get Flacco if he's cut. And then you have the Colts quarterback situation locked up.
How close is this guy to winning? If he's in win now mode, those 2026 first should go toward improving your team as best as you can. I don't know if this is as best as you can.
Right. It's not like he doesn't have a starter, because Richardson is potentially awesome.
Yep.
So, like, if he was in just Fields and Minshew and needed a quarterback, then yes, I think you make the trade. But I would probably look to explore other options.
Yeah, I on the surface,
I think getting Flacco is the way to go to just secure the Colts quarterback situation, and then just see what happens with Fields as the year plays out.
Yeah, and if you're just in sort of win now mode, then maybe next year you are in win now mode, and that's when you could definitely get a lot more for your 2026 first.
And I misspoke. Obviously, he said 10-team league, so the 10th pick in the first round, not the 12th pick.
This is Keddy. Nope. That'd be Kelly.
Kelly
Kowski. A city south of Washington. Oh, nope. A city south.
Put your glasses on, boy.
A city south of Wellington.
This must be the guy who I met at my son's baseball fundraiser. Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Who, Keddy from Washington?
No, Kelly from Wellington.
10-team, 1-quarterback league. Considering proposing this trade to the person with the number 2 pick. I really want Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. I would give him Puka, a 3rd rounder, and the 8th pick. I would get Drake London and the 2nd pick.
I like it.
I do too.
Okay. Thank you, Keddy. And have a great weekend, everybody. We will talk to you on Monday. Going to do some FFT in 5 now as well. Make sure you listen to that. For Dave and Jamie and Thomas, I'm Adam. See ya.